Welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at unit test in Python, which is a module for testing. And that's not testing as in exam testing, it's making sure that your program works as desired. So you want it to pass all the tests that you set it to make sure that it's doing the things you want it to. And unit test is inspired by JUnit, which is for a different language, but it's very similar. And there's a kind of standardized testing across most languages that it follows. It can do all sorts of things, but we're just going to look at the basics to be able to test a program. So the first thing we need to do is import unit test. And we're also going to import math to write our function. And the function we're going to be testing is called square root. So we'll just define square root, which is going to take in x, which will be an integer, and it's going to return an integer. And the reason we've put this in is so that it's well documented, which is something you probably do if you're testing code. And it's going to return the ceiling of the square root. And so if we just test that, we can say for I in range 10 and print our square root function on that number. And you can see square root of 0 is 0, 1 is 1, 4 is 2, 9 is 3. But in between, it's rounded everything up. So the square root of 2 is 1.4 and a bit, which is rounded up to 2. So now we want to make sure it works. So we'll create a function called test square root. And it needs to extend unittest.testCase. So the first thing we want to do is test square numbers. And we'll just say for I in range 100, we need to assert that I is equal to the square root of I squared. So this is going to go through the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, and it's going to check the function square root of the square. We get that number back. We will then want to run our test cases. So we'll say if name is main, because we might want to import the square root function from somewhere else, and then we don't want to run tests. So unit test.main, and we run that, and it says ran one test in 0.001 second. And I'm actually going to set the velocity equal to 1, which you can see doesn't make a huge amount of difference now, but it means that we can see more of the details about the test cases we're running. So now we're going to test something else. We're going to test negative numbers. And we're just going to make sure that we raise a value error when we call square root with -1. And you can see it's all okay. And it is worth noticing that there are lots of things that you can assert. So you can assert things that are almost equal, the counts are equal, and there really are just loads and loads of things that you might want to test depending on what your program is meant to do. So for example, maybe you're generating telephone numbers and you want to check that the thing it generates is a valid string and matches some regular expressions. So the next thing we're going to do is write a function that tests large numbers. And it's just going to test one large number. And so we're going to define our number to be this. And so if we assert equal the square root of this number squared and this number, it says that we get this failure. So when we square root it, we actually get this slightly different number because of the way the math.square root function works. And that means that when we square it again, we get a slightly different number back. And so instead of asserting that they're equal, we might want to say for large numbers, they don't need to be equal, they can just be almost equal. And we run that, but you see we get an error again because it's checking 7 decimal places. However, we haven't got any decimal places, so we actually need to set the number of decimal places we want using the places, and we'll set it to -3. So obviously, because it's a huge number, we only care about these last 3 digits not being equal. If these are wrong, then it doesn't really matter. But if, more is wrong, then our function's not working. And you see now it says it's all okay. Then we might want to test integers. And so we're going to check all the integers from up to 100. And we want to assert equal. And we want to check that the square root of our number is equal to the floor of the square root of the number. And we might say, if you take the number 10 and you square root it, then you get back 3 because, that's the one below. And if you square root 15, you also get 3. You don't get 4 because, when you square that, it's too large. And in other languages, if you square root a number and you just take the answer, you might get back a number that's smaller, and you generally will rather than the one that's bigger. So we might want to check that they're equal. However, unsurprisingly, when we run this, we get this error, and so we can see, this is what's gone wrong, and it tells us where it's gone wrong. So you can see we've found some cases where our program fails. So of course we could then say, all right then, let's edit it so that it does that. And now it passes all our tests. So you can see that testing programs using unit test is very simple. You can just take a module and check that everything works. You can also do things beforehand, maybe create dummy classes and then call them to check that they're working. But you can see that it's a very simple module to use. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. When you test code in the future, you'll be able to use it. And I'll see you again, same time, next week. Till then.